Have you ever physically harmed anyone?
Ever physically harmed anyone? No.
Today's video is about one of the most notorious, charming, good-looking, intelligent psychopaths of our time. Before we get into today's video though, I do want to let you guys know that this video is for entertainment purposes only. Please remember to be kind to everybody everywhere in your everyday life, in your home, in the grocery store, and especially in the comment section down below. Please do not show hate to anybody, anywhere. Good morning, my lovelies, my beauties, my friends. My name is Christina and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, thank you so much for clicking on this video. I really hope that you will subscribe, stick around, take a chance on hearing some things that I have to say. And if you are a returning subscriber, y'all already know. Y'all are my babies. So good morning, good morning, good morning. How is everybody doing today? I hope you all are having an amazing day. Today's story time is like, whew. Now, I've gotten a lot of requests to talk about good old Ted Bundy, who was actually captured very, very, very close to where I live right now. However, this is so deep and so dark. There's going to be some things I just cannot talk about. But what we're going to do today is I'm going to tell you guys the story as much as I possibly can. And at the end, we're going to go over some things. I want to compare Ted Bundy and some of the things that he did to some other people that you guys know. And we're just going to kind of have a discussion. All right, let's get into the story. Ted Bundy, the very, very, very fascinating serial killer, psychopath, charmer, lawyer, on his way to be a psychologist. Like, this man had it all going on. Supposedly had a loving family. So what made him kill over 30 women in multiple different states in some of the most gruesome ways? So let's take it back from the beginning. Okay, so Ted Bundy was born in 1946 to his unwed mother. That's the way they said it back then. Unwed mother, like. Okay. So anyway, so he was born to his mother, and things were a little bit weird at first because his mother got pregnant and she wanted to give the baby up for adoption, but her dad said, no, absolutely not. You're going to keep the baby. We'll raise the baby for you, yada, yada, yada. So she was still living at home at the time, and she gave birth to Ted Theodore, and he thought that his grandparents were his parents for a long time. He said that he thought it was kind of weird that his big sister took a lot care of him a lot, but it ended up obviously being his mom. And then allegedly his grandpa, who he thought was his dad for a long time, started being abusive to his sister/mother. Very confusing, very weird. I get it. And she took Theodore, Ted, and moved to Seattle with him. So now he's actually living with his mom, and now he knows that this is his mother. She ends up meeting a guy, I believe his name was Johnny Bundy, and he worked at like a factory. She married him and he adopted Ted, so that's how he got the name Ted Bundy. Ted growing up had a lot of insecurities about being an illegitimate child, you know, because he was born to an unwed mother. Like, that was a huge, huge, huge deal for him. And he even saw his birth certificate at one time, and under father it said unknown, and he got really irate and angry about it. So he held this anger in because he was born illegitimate. I think that's how you say the word. And he also had a lot of insecurities because his family wasn't rich. His parents, now his adopted dad who became his father, and his mother who then had more children. I think he said he was one of 5 siblings. They were lower to middle class. I mean, they didn't want for anything, but they didn't have the nicest cars, the nicest houses, and all of that stuff. And Ted seemed to really be materialistic. Like, he held people that had a lot of money to this higher standard and always compared himself to those people. Now, there is rumors, you know, the good old rumors, that Ted's grandpa was actually the father of him. that he possibly did something to his daughter. Growing up, Ted was described as to be like a loner, but he was a good kid. He was very, very, very intelligent. He didn't have a lot of friends growing up, but he was super smart. Ted said he had a great childhood, that he was raised in a Christian home and everything was lovey-dovey and kosher. He didn't get abused or anything like that. Now, as Ted started getting older, he wanted to go to law school. He wanted to be a lawyer, and he was also a psych major, which is incredibly interesting when you think about that. He obviously is going to end up being a serial killer, and he was a psych major, so he studied psychology, but he also studied law to be a lawyer at the same time. In 1974, when he was studying law school, he was trying to like buddy and be friends with all the preppy, popular kids that were in school. And he just continued to compare himself to the other kids or adults, law students at the time, that he didn't have like the nicest cars and the nicest houses. And so he was dead set that he was going to be a lawyer and he was going to make a lot of money and he was going to have all of the materialistic things that he had always wanted growing up. He ended up dating his first girlfriend while he was in law school named Diane. Now, Diane had long dark hair that was straight and apart down the middle. According to Ted, she ended up breaking it off with him and broke his heart, and he never got over that. Later on down the road, she decided that she wanted to be with Ted and came back, and he went back with her just so he could destroy her and crush her and let her feel how he had felt. But while he was with her, he compared himself to her as well because she came from a high-class family. Diane had lots of money, but nevertheless, once she turned him down the first time, he never got over it. By this time, while Ted was in college, he was full-fledged into his prawn addiction. The part I didn't tell you guys in the beginning was that when Ted was younger, when he was a kid, he used to walk the streets and stuff, you know, like way back in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, kids used to walk everywhere. You guys know the stories that your grandparents told you. Boy, I used to walk 20 miles in the snow to get to school every day. He did a lot of walking, and back then is when risque, I'm trying to not say the words here, but you know, the magazines started coming out. So he would dig through trashes and find dirty magazines. And he said that it became a serious addiction for him, that he became addicted to seeing these dirty images. But he described it just like any addiction. He needed more and more and more to be fed and more to be satisfied. So the just soft core prawn was no longer feeding his need as a kid. So as he started getting older, he started looking for more stuff where girls were chained up or, you know, women were gagged, and then eventually magazines where it showed women like maybe possibly being abused in that type of way to satisfy this sort of, you know, need in him. And so by the time he got into college, he was full-fledged into this addiction. Snuff prawn. So after his first girlfriend, Diane, broke up with him, he decided that he wanted to act out his fantasies in real life with a woman. So in 1974, the same year that he was at this law school, he snuck into the house of a woman named Karen Sparks. Now, the thing about this is every woman that he attacked looked like his first girlfriend that broke his heart, Diane, you know, with the part down the middle and the brown hair. I mean, sometimes their hair was wavy, sometimes their hair was longer, but they all had dark hair with a part down the middle. I'm not going to describe what he did to every single person and go through every single name because it's well over 30 women. However, I am going to touch on some of them for you guys. And the first woman, Karen Sparks, he snuck into her house while she was sleeping, and he took a metal crowbar and he hit her in the head, which therefore knocked her out. Now, after that, he took a metal rod of some sort, possibly still the crowbar, and shoved it inside of her so bad that it busted her bladder. He ruptured her bladder from a metal bar of some sort. And then he took advantage of her in that way, beat her, and left. Now, Karen Sparks actually did survive. She was his first victim that we know of. We'll get more to that at the end. And she survived. She did not remember the attack. She went to the hospital. Her dad was called. I mean, I guess her roommates came in. They found her laying in a pool of blood. And when she came to in the hospital, she saw her dad, and her dad was like, oh my gosh. And she was like, what happened? And her dad said, oh, you just fell down the stairs, because he didn't want to upset her because she was really, really, really hurt. And then as she healed and got better, they let her know that she had been attacked. And she doesn't have a whole lot of memory, but she did have a lot of healing to do. And she still lives with disabilities from that attack still to this day, 50 years ago. By the time July of 1974 hit, Ted had killed 8 women by the middle of July. The more Ted got away with these attacks and was not caught, the more it fueled him wanting to attack more. There were times that he actually got 2 women at one time. Now, he did it a bunch of different ways. Like sometimes he would sneak into their houses in the middle of the night. He was also seen at certain times peeping into women's windows on the college campus. He would assess the woman that he was going to attack. So maybe if it was a person that he could tell was like a friendly woman for whatever reason, he would put a cast on his arm and carry books and drop them. And then, when the woman is like, oh my gosh, are you okay? Totally something I would do. What about you guys? Like if I see somebody with a broken arm or a broken leg and they drop their books or something, I'm going to run over there to help them. I will take their stuff with them to their car. Like it just really opens up your mind. And then once the woman takes the books and helps them to the car, he would pull out a crowbar and bash them, bludgeon them on the head, knock them out, and put them into his little Volkswagen. Now at this time, while he started doing all of this, he started dating a woman named Liz. Now, Liz was a divorced young lady. She was a little bit older than Ted. She had a daughter, okay? Now, Liz, or Elizabeth, I will leave some videos of interviews from her linked down below. Liz and Ted were together for 5 years, okay? And she loved Ted. She thought he was like the most charming, amazing man ever. Her whole entire family loved him. She was planning on marrying Ted. She thought he was just like her Prince Charming that came riding in on a horse, which narcissists, sociopaths, and psychopaths are that way. They are the most amazing people ever when they have that mask on. Liz even said that Ted was amazing with her daughter. Her daughter loved Ted. He rode horses with her. He took her places. He spent time with her. But during the late hours of the night when Ted would leave, he lived a very different life. Now, as these women in their town continued to go missing at the time, now you guys got to remember, this is back in the 1970s. Back then, they didn't have DNA match. I don't even know if they had fingerprints. They definitely didn't have security cameras or phones, with cameras on them. It was all word of mouth. There was no internet back then to, tell all of your friends in different towns. It was the newspaper, the radio, and a little bit of news that was in your local area. So these women started going missing. And people were talking about it being a guy named Ted that drove a Volkswagen, and a sketch started going out. Now, people that were co-workers of Elizabeth, who was Liz, which was Ted Bundy's girlfriend, started coming to her with these sketches and saying, I don't know, man, this guy looks kind of like your boyfriend. And she was like, this could not be him. No way in heck he would do that. Like, this is my knight in shining armor. This is my Prince Charming. I'm going to marry him. He's so good with my daughter. Like, this could not be him. This has got to be another Ted. Now, during this time as well, the police department were getting calls in talking about it's this Ted, this Ted. They had over 3,000 Teds that drove Volkswagens that had brown hair that was being reported to the police department. So, I mean, it literally could have been anybody, any good old Ted. And it definitely was not Liz's Ted, according to her. She couldn't help but to pay a little bit more attention to Ted at this time. And at this time, she said Ted started becoming a lot more aggressive in the bedroom with her. Like he was wanting to tie her up and hit her in different ways. And even asked her one time to quit saying anything and just pretend to be dead. Now, can you guys imagine? Hello, like, listen, I don't know what you guys are into. Let me tell you something. But could you just imagine, like, being tied up and being like, shut up, pretend that you're dead. You're like, and the person's just still just, like, going at it. Like, I mean, I guess whatever floats your boat. It's a little weird to me, but nevertheless. So she started feeling like he was maybe into some stuff, but she wanted to please him. So she did it. Like, can you whatever. So she did it and she went along with it. But at the same time, she was like, okay, I love him. I'm going to marry him. Around this time too, she found in his car a bag of women's underwear. And so she started thinking that maybe he was cheating on her. Then she found a bowl of keys in his car, just like random house keys. And then she found a set of handcuffs in there. So when she found the handcuffs, she asked him about it, and he said he had no idea where they came from. But the more she started asking him about different things, the more distant he grew to her. So she quit asking him as much, and she just felt like, okay, whatever, it's gonna pass. Relationships go through things. I mean, she'd already been divorced once, and she didn't want to rock the boat with him. So many women at this point had gone missing in this town. Ted decided that he was going to leave and go to a different town and go to law school there. So he kisses his girlfriend Liz goodbye. He packs up his stuff. He kisses her daughter goodbye, and he goes to this next town. Within the first day of this next town that he goes to go to law school, a woman goes missing. So between October to November, you guys, October to November of 1974, 4 more women are missing, and Ted has taken them and done stuff with them. And one time he took 2 women in one day, and he would take these women. I told you guys how he would get creative, and he would put a sling on his arm. Or one time he went to the beach, and there was all these women laying out, and he put a sling on his arm, and he told the women that he had a sailboat and that he needed some help. And he got 2 women in one day, and he would put them in the car. He would bludgeon them, handcuff them. He would take the front seat out of his Volkswagen and put it in the trunk of his car. That way he could have the women laying down as they were knocked out and handcuffed while he drove, and nobody could see them in there. So then he would take these women to like this wooded area. I mean, he did it a bunch of different ways, but this particular day, he takes them to this wooded area. He bludgeons them. He strangles them. He does whatever to take their life. And then he sleeps with them. And there was even times that he would leave their bodies in the woods, and he would come back for days and still have his way with these women's bodies. Like, he was completely obsessed and taken over by the act of killing and the act of being with these bodies after the souls were no longer on earth, if you know what I mean. There was even reports that he had 5 different heads. Was it 5 heads or 7 heads that he beheaded? Oh my gosh, you guys, I'm never gonna get through this video. That he would behead them and take their heads back home, and he would put makeup on them, and he would kiss them, and he would talk to the heads. He would sleep with the heads in the bed, and the whole while he's doing this, y'all, he is literally like the most amazing person. When people knew him, like he was into politics, which I don't know if that surprises me or not, but he was into politics. He was on his way to be a governor one day, okay? He was going to law school. He was studying psychology. And guess what else he was doing, y'all? He was a hotline phone call operator for women who had been assaulted in that way, in the R way, right? So he's sitting there in his spare time on the phone talking to these women that are calling this 800 hotline to cry and talk about what this abuser did to them. And he was the one that talked them through it. Like, this man covered every different angle, like sick, all while being the charming, handsome, intelligent, successful guy in the community that he was. Which is why when he would get reports about being a Ted that drives his car or whatever, the cops would come and talk to him, and they would be like, there is no way that this clean-shaven, clean record lawyer guy on the way is doing anything to anybody, and they would let him go. Now, by the time that happened to those 4 women when he moved to go to the other law school, people were coming to Elizabeth, who was his girlfriend, you guys, and saying, listen, we don't want to freak you out. We don't want to make you paranoid, but it's happening down there too. So she starts thinking, okay, wait a minute. It was happening here. It's happening there. Like, is he a part of this? So her daughter was getting baptized one day, and he came over to hang out with her and her family the night before their daughter's baptism, and he left early that night. A girl goes missing that night, and he shows up late to her daughter's baptism. So she really starts getting suspicious, but she didn't want to ask him because she was afraid, right? So she did call the investigators and told them what she was thinking and, just kind of got it off of her chest. The investigators, again, go and talk to Ted. Ted's like, no, couldn't, I was here, I was there, and they brush it off like it could not be this guy. In January of 1975, a woman named Karen Campbell goes missing. You guys, all of these are sad, but she was at a ski resort with her fiance, okay? And she was in the lobby with her fiance, and Bundy came up to her and said whatever he said to her. My arm's broken, my leg's broken, I got a flat tire. Who knows what he said to her? He gets her in the car, he takes her off. Now, can you imagine? Okay, they find her body a month later on the side of the road, completely frozen, and all of this stuff. She was nude, in the cold, frozen a month later. But can you imagine her fiance? They're on vacation at a ski resort, and your fiance and you are having a great time, and she just goes to the bathroom or whatever, disappears, and then you never see her again until a month later. You're literally at the ski resort looking for her everywhere. That's so sad, so devastating. All of them are sad. Just a couple months later, a ski instructor named Julie went missing as well. And then he tried to pick up another woman. Now, this woman was coming out. She had the long, dark hair, a part down the middle. She was coming out of a grocery store, and Ted goes up to her and tells her, hey, listen, I'm an investigator. I'm with the police department. Somebody's been trying to break into your car while you're in there. I need you to come with me to identify this person and answer some questions. And she starts freaking out. She's like, oh my gosh, it's my mom's car. I'm going to be in so much trouble. Somebody broke into it. She saw her car while they were walking, and she was like, my car doesn't look broken into. And he was like, you got to come with me. You got to come with me. And she's feeling suspicious, this is weird. However, he is acting like a cop. He's talking like a cop, and he gets her into his car to take her down to the police station. While they're on the way, she starts realizing they're not on the way to the police station, and she starts to try to jump out of the car. He hits her. There's a scuffle. They fight. She fights back. In some way, somehow, she gets him to stop the car by fighting him. She runs out. She's able to jump in the car with somebody else, and she leaves, and Ted takes off. Now, this was the instance where a woman saw him very well up close, was in his presence, and was able to escape alive. She immediately goes to the police department, but Ted is long gone at this time. But in August of 1975, Ted gets pulled over. Now, why does he get pulled over? He gets pulled over because the cops see a Volkswagen creeping along really slowly in a neighborhood where there's girls at, sorority girls, with the headlights off. So he pulls the car over. When he pulls the car over, he asks to search the vehicle. When he searches Ted's vehicle, he finds a ski mask with the eyes cut out of it, a crowbar, handcuffs, rope, all of these items, which is considered to be a ape kit, with an R. And so he goes to arrest Ted, and Ted tries to run. He tackles him to the ground, all of that stuff, gets Ted arrested, and they put him in a lineup for that chick that got away from him, and she picks him out of a lineup immediately. And the lineup that they had Ted in, all of the guys looked really similar, and she picked him out immediately. So now he's in jail, being charged with kidnapping and waiting to go to trial. Now, this is the crazy part. His friends, Ted's friends, got up the bail money and came and bailed Ted out because they could not believe in a million years that Ted could be the one to do this. Okay, Ted was the master manipulator, charismatic to everybody he met. So they get bail money, they come and bail him out, and he shows up on his girlfriend Liz's front porch, and she's startled to see him at first. She's like, wait a minute, hold up. What are you doing here? How did you get out of jail? He tells her everything, that his lie, that his friends bail him out and they've got the wrong person. It couldn't be me. And he woos her, and she trusts him and believes him and lets him back into her home and into her life. Wow, you guys. Wow. In March of 1976, Ted is convicted for the kidnapping. So they sentenced him to 1 to 15 years. And so he's going to be serving his time. Of course, he is still telling everybody he is innocent. They got the wrong guy. There is no way this could be him. All of that there and the other. Well, while they have him in prison for this kidnapping, they charge him with Karen Campbell's murder, and now he's waiting to go to trial for that. Now, while Ted was in prison, he was charismatic to all of the guards too. The police officers, the lawyers, Everybody trusted him while he was in prison, you guys. I'm trying to tell you, wait till we get to the end of this. Just, I cannot even. Everybody trusted him. Like, he was the guy that, like, got along with everybody and made the guards laugh, and they trusted him and just really thought that maybe he could be innocent and he didn't even do all of this. Well, he was going to the law library in the courthouse one day so he could study stuff for his case, his murder case he's up against. And the police officer takes the handcuffs and the shackles off of him because, oh, Ted, you're just going to read. It's going to be fine. And Ted jumps out of the 2-story window there, hurts his leg a little bit, but he runs and he gets away and he's on the run for 6 days. So he escaped prison, which was at a courthouse, but nevertheless, he escaped prison that time. Okay, that was the first time he escaped. Now, that was in June of 1977. Okay, in December of 1977, he escapes again. You guys want to know how? I'm going to tell you how. In his room, like he was in a, his prison cell or whatever, there was like a little like air vent thing in the ceiling, and he was talking to somebody one day, and somebody said, "You'd have to be real skinny to get through that. You'd have to be real tiny." So Ted started losing weight. He stopped eating so he could get really, really, really thin. And at nighttime, he would crawl up through that hole and he was digging his way out, or however he was doing it. And get this, you guys, the other inmates were telling the officers, "We can hear Ted Bundy in the air vents. He's up there." And they just ignored it. They're like, whatever. They're like, yep, Ted's in the air vents again. The officers, they just thought, nope, not Ted. Oh, that can't be true. Well, the day that he escaped, finally, the officers come into his room to look for him. They pull the blanket off of him in the bed, and it's nothing but books in there. And he had escaped through the air vent, you guys. The man escapes from prison through the air vent. He flies to Chicago, gets on an airplane, you guys, just like it ain't like he's not a wanted fugitive for murder. He flies to Chicago. He takes a train to Michigan, steals a car and drives to Atlanta, and then he hops on a bus and heads to Tallahassee, Florida. In Tallahassee, Florida, he signs a rental agreement and starts renting a room from these people that is right next to FSU, Florida State University, the college that my son goes to. Yeah. And he stayed by the sorority houses. Like, how do you guys not see that? Like, how do you guys not know? But then again, there was no internet back then. There was no internet. So he is just living in Florida next to the sorority, next to all of these young women on the run from the police. Now, you got to think how sick this man had to be to escape from prison. And the first thing he's thinking is finding women so he could do this again. Not running away to another country so he can live a life of normalcy, or so he can sip pina coladas on the beach, or so he could, explore, other countries and live his life, or hide down in Mexico or whatever. No, none of that. He wants to get to another place where he can get another woman. That's how sick he was. And the scariest thing about it was everybody that knew him thought he was not only normal, but an amazing man. Scary. In the middle of January of 1978, Ted Bundy sneaks into a sorority house where these young women are sleeping. He's going around from room to room, you guys. He bludgeons to death 2 young girls that were laying in their beds sleeping. He attacked 2 more before he got out of the house, and he ran and escaped because one of the other girls came home and they slammed the door and he heard it. But he attacked 4 women in the sorority house and tried to kill all 4 of them, but he only was able to kill 2, and the other 2 are still alive to this day. And then finally, his last murder was a 12-year-old baby girl named Kimberly Leach that he drove up in a van. He got her into the van, he tricked her, and he took her and did unspeakable things. In February, Ted was pulled over for driving a stolen car, and he was arrested for the last time. But this man just got around and did all of this stuff. It's just so devastating and heartbreaking and nuts. Now, in June of 1979, this is when Ted started his trial for the murders of the sorority girls. And you guys, he made a complete spectacle. It's very much of like a Jodi Arias situation. If you guys don't know the Jodi Arias story, or Arias, how do you say her name? I did a video right here and you guys can watch it. She was on the stand for 18 days, which is unheard of for her to take the stand for 18 days. But nevertheless, he made a complete spectacle of the situation too. Ted Bundy decided that he was going to be his own lawyer and he was going to represent himself. Okay, so this is the thing. Typically when people go to court, especially because they've been attacked, they talk to the lawyer. Okay. It's very hard for a victim, man, woman, child, elderly person, it doesn't matter, to have to face their victim again or maybe even retell the story. They have to retell the story to a cop in private, much less on a stand in a courtroom in front of tons of people looking at you, as well as your attacker staring at you. Okay. And the person that has to give their testimony usually talks to the lawyer or the judge. But in this case, because Ted Bundy decided he was going to represent himself, he was the one the victims had to speak to. So he gets up there being a lawyer for himself and he's questioning his own victims. Like, can you imagine how hard that was? And he was so sick, you guys. He was getting up there and making these women explain in detail. And that's something that especially defense attorneys try to avoid. They don't want the witnesses to tell every little detail because then the jury hears it, they get it in their mind, they have compassion, they feel sorry for the victim, and then they, whatever. But he gets up there and he's questioning his victims, and having them tell every detail, like asking questions like, how much blood was there? Where was the blood at? How much did it splatter? How did it feel? Like he was getting off on hearing them have to explain what he did to them. You guys, the sickness. And this man had fans out the wazoo. We're going to get to that at the end too. I'm talking about there were people outside the courtroom that were like, they loved them some Ted Bundy. They thought, no way this man could have done this. He's so handsome. There were even women that were standing outside the courtroom that were scared of him, but also infatuated with him. Like, talk about some daddy issues. Like, sis, I'm going to need you to sit down and go get some therapy. If this is what you're attracted to, honey, go. I'm going to need you to get it together. Okay. Where are your parents? He just enjoyed that. He enjoyed being the center of attention. He enjoyed having people talking about him, but he maintained his innocence the whole entire time. What ended up sealing his fate for him was bite marks. He bit one of the young girls in her butt and she had teeth marks. Now, this was the first time that a court or investigators or FBI or anything ever used like the teeth match or whatever. And that's what they did. I don't know what you call it. Dental matching, whatever it is. And so they took Ted from prison and they put him in a chair so they could get the prints of his teeth. And at first he refused. And the dentist was like, listen, we have an actual warrant to search your mouth. So you can do it your way or you can do it our way. And they showed Ted, like over on this table, they had this contraption to like force his mouth open and like do all this crazy stuff to him. So he complied, but he looked over at the dentist and he goes, hey, I'd never hurt anybody, right? I'm not a violent person. He was still trying to manipulate, even in the chair, to get his teeth printed up. Well, nevertheless, long story short, the dental, it matched. His teeth matched the bite mark on the girl's butt, and he was found guilty, and the judge gave him the electric chair to be executed. And he was executed in the state of Florida 10 years after being sentenced, which a lot of the victims were upset about. They were like, he needs to be gone, like, now. But he stayed on death row for 10 years. And then later he actually gave some interviews and he finally admitted some of the stuff that he did. And that's where they came up with the number. They counted at least 30 women. I mean, he was only charged with a couple, but at least 30 women that he had done this to across 7 different states, I believe. And it could have been more. There were rumors about Ted Bundy, about like a young girl that went missing in his neighborhood when he was a teenage boy. And they wonder if he did that, or different people that went missing or were abused or stuff like that. There was tons of people that went missing back then, but it was the 70s or the 60s or the 50s. And a lot of the times if a girl went missing, they would just mark them as a runaway. Okay, well, she's a runaway. She went somewhere else. But they started to wonder if Ted had possibly been kidnapping and killing ever since he was younger. Now, Ted, when he gave his final interviews, and I will leave those linked down below, he says the reason why he believes that he became a killer or had a thirst for the lifestyle that he had was because of that prawn, you know, the dirty magazines and stuff like that. And I do think it's funny because, you know, if you guys watched my Paris Benton video, he was into stuff like that too. And Ted Bundy said that he was in prison on death row for 10 years at that point. And the common denominator that he had with other serial killers in there was that they all had an addiction to that stuff. They all had that kind of addiction. And I think that's kind of fascinating. And it makes you wonder, like, but it makes you wonder, it makes me wonder, I don't know if maybe it's necessarily the videos or the magazines that he was seeing, or if it's that he had that precursor already in him and that just fueled it or gave him vision. Because do you guys know the story about the Toy Box Killer? I mean, that man was doing, and if you guys want me to do that video, let me know down below. I know some of you guys have asked, but whew, that is, and you got to give details to know that story. Holy cow. But the Toy Box Killer, he would kidnap these women and videotape doing things that he shouldn't be doing, and then sell the videotapes on the dark web for millions. I mean, he would make millions of dollars. So there's obviously a market for it. There's obviously people that enjoy seeing people get hurt to that degree. And it's crazy to think about. Like, monsters don't look like monsters. Real monsters don't. Real monsters look like your husbands, your sisters, your parents, your mothers, your grandparents, your uncles, your next door neighbor, the guy that's checking you out at Walmart, the woman that hands you your money at the bank. Like, monsters look like you and me. And that's what's scary. So I wanted to get into some final thoughts here. Okay, I already talked to you guys about the whole situation with the dirty magazines and Paris Bennett. What do you guys think about that? Like, Paris Bennett, do you guys know that story? How do you think that compares to this guy? Do you think it could be what they saw? Or do you think it could be that they already had that precursor in them and that just kind of fueled it? Because I'm leaning more towards that. Intimate Movies and Magazine is a multi-billion-dollar business, but you don't have that many serial killers out there. So, I mean, I don't know. What do you guys think? I also wanted to say that Ted Bundy, in his final interviews, said that he was possessed by something when this happened. Like, he felt like possessed and something came over him. And I think that's kind of weird because that's exactly what Chris Watts said. Chris Watts said that he felt like he was possessed, like it wasn't him doing it. So will Chris Watts kill again if he gets a chance? And will he get the chance? More videos coming on that because it just never ends. But nevertheless, what do you guys think about the fact that Ted Bundy said he was possessed and Chris Watts said he was possessed? Now, you know I believe in the spiritual realm. That's a whole nother video and a whole nother subject, but what do you think? Also, in Ted Bundy's final interview, they asked him if he had remorse for his victims. Now, this was incredibly frustrating for me, and I will leave this interview linked down below as well. It is a long one, so put your headphones on, do some laundry, and just listen, okay? But when he talks about this part, I want you to watch it, okay? When he asked him if he had remorse for his victims, Ted Bundy he beats around he talks about so many different things. And then he comes back to say, like, he never even really says yes. It just kind of reminds me too of the Chris Watts situation. Oh, and I don't want to give you guys too much, but you know, with Chris Watts not being emotional about his family being dead, you know, sir, Ted Bundy, you killed 30 women. And somebody asks you if you're remorseful about it, the answer should be yes. And then you can say everything else. But he didn't say yes. He started talking about himself over and over again. You know, like the pain it causes me. And oh, when I think about it in grave detail of all the terrible things that I've done, all I can think about is how much it hurts me that I did this. It's like, excuse me, sir. We're asking if you had remorse for the other people. We don't care how you feel. Hopefully, I don't know. It's just so frustrating. I had to take my headphones off and tell my husband, I'm like, he is aggravating me. And the last thing that I want to touch on, which if anybody has been in any kind of relationship, friendship, family ship or whatever with a narcissist or a sociopath or a psychopath, you know what I'm talking about. And this was the case with Ted Bundy as well. These types of people are well loved usually. They're loved by everybody. The only people that get to see the mask off are their victims. So in Ted Bundy's case, it was the same thing. Like, the only people that saw the true Ted Bundy was his victims. Same thing with Chris Watts and his wife and kids. Like, they saw the true Chris Watts, right? And for all of you guys out there that have been in situations, obviously, if you're watching this, you were not murdered or killed, but I know a lot of you guys have been in, relationships or whatever with a narcissist. And it's weird because it's like these people, like Ted Bundy, were loved by everybody. Ted Bundy had fans. He got married while he was in prison. He allegedly got a woman pregnant in the visitation room, and the officers were allowing him to sleep with women in the visitation room with other people there, just like hopping on the lap, to the point that she got pregnant and birthed a child by Ted Bundy while he was in prison on death row. That's how charismatic and loved this serial killer was. It's crazy. And you could be sitting next to one right now. Your teacher could be one. Your bus driver could be one. And you would never know it unless they choose you to be their victim. All right, my loves, let me know what you guys think about this video. How wild is this? It is wild. As always, please do not forget to like this video. It's a free way that you can help your girl out. And until next time, I love you guys so very much. And I'll see y'all in the next video. Bye. Love you guys. Bye.